Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists, covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. I recently put out a video giving tips on running Curse of Strahd on Roll20, and I wanted to do the same with Van Richten's guide. For anyone who's considering buying it and is curious to know what it looks like in Roll20, what's included. I know I was curious when I got it myself. I thought I'd do a quick sort of demo, overview, share some tips, talk about things you might want to add or change, and so on. Quick disclaimer before we get started, I don't use all of Roll20's features, so I don't tend to use the Compendium much because that's like the information that's kind of included in the book, because I also own the book and I like to have the book separate and then the maps on the screen. I also don't use macros and we don't use Roll20's character sheets, we use D&D Beyond, and when we roll for attacks we use the Beyond 20 plugin, which is on Firefox and Chrome I believe, and it basically rolls, you can roll on a D&D Beyond character sheet or stat block and it rolls it automatically in Roll20. So we do that. So I don't use all of Roll20's features. I want to be upfront about that because this isn't going to be, I suppose, 100% comprehensive. And I wanted to just show the stuff that I'm familiar with and show most of what's on offer, than try and fumble around and be like, oh, how does this thing work? I don't know, let's find out together. So please bear that in mind. I might not cover every single aspect and every single feature that Roll20 offers, but hopefully I give you a good idea of how it looks and what's included. There's also no paid promo going on here. Roll20 haven't given it to me, or I've asked me to make this video or anything like that. I just already owned it and thought this would be useful to people. Let's get to it. Okay, so I've just booted up a fresh module of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. This is kind of like the splash page, landing page. As you go in, if I click the different maps, there's not a huge, it's mostly just domain maps for the main domains listed in the guide. You've also got a tokens page. This lists all the NPCs, all the, it took a little second to load there. All the new monsters, that's all the monsters that are in Van Richten's guide, but it also includes monsters and NPCs who are mentioned in Van Richten's guide. So for example, it says that Chikuna in Valachan has Displacer Beasts. No, Displacer Beasts don't appear in Van Richten's guide, they appear in, I believe, the Monster Manual. So you've got those tokens as well. So it gives you additional tokens than what's in the book. It gives you all the tokens you need that are mentioned as well. It's pretty handy, really. You've got purple worms for, I think that's Haslan. Tree ants might be, and T-Rex might be Valachan as well. Which is pretty good to have those additional tokens as well. I've also got the Séance board, I'll show that later, and the House of Lament, I'll probably show that later as well. Before I move on, actually, let me talk about some of these tokens. You'll see some of these tokens have an asterisk next to them that says represents rollable tokens. So if we go to someone like Harkon, where's Harkon? Harkon, Lucas, there you go. He's got, if I zoom in closer, you can see, Harkon's got an asterisk next to him. What this means is it's for people who've got more than one version of a token, like Lycanthropes is a good example, any sort of shape changer. You can right click, multi-sided token, choose side, and he can transform into a Loup-Garou or a wolf, for example. And is there another example? Chikuna can transform into a panther and a were-panther as well, but they haven't got a token for that. You might have to just add your own. So these are, when I said this in the Curse of Strahd video, when I first started Roll20, I didn't realise these existed, and when I ran, say, on something like a werewolf, I had 3 versions of the token, and I was like swapping them around, and then it took time, and yeah, different HPs, you know, if I didn't carry across the HP properly, and it had more or less HP than it should have done, it was a bit of a mess and a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. So once I found about these, it was much better. Jacqueline Renier, who's a were-rat, she's the, you see were-rat and rat. I think it changes the size as well. Oh, that's just giant rat. So yes, and you'll also see as well, some of the tokens don't have an actual picture. So there's no picture for Wilfred Godefroy, who is the Dark Lord of Mordant. You haven't got Jennifer and Laurie Weathermay Foxgrove. I did a video about them. I said that even though they've got some artwork in Van Richten's guide which shows the sort of sides and backs of them because they're fighting a werewolf, there's some good art for them in Mist Hunters. So what I did is I made my own tokens using those. If I remember, I'll include a link in the description if you're not familiar with it already, called Token Stamp, free tool online where you can make your own tokens. You can even add in, it has one of the options is this border that appears, and you can sort of add in, you can add your own tokens essentially and then add them to Roll20 through one of the features here. You can sort of add in your own stuff. If we go to a map, so there's a measuring tool. You can see how fast this is Barovia. It might take a few seconds to load. There we go. So you can see this is, so how long does it take from the edge of the map through the gates of Barovia to the village of Barovia? About 4.5 miles. All the maps should be configured accordingly. If there's a scale, there you go. Yeah, you can see there it's exactly 1 mile. I've used the maps for, let's see, Darkon I'm going to use soon. I've used Demonu, Folkovnia. Going to use Hazland soon. Mordant and Malachan. So it's handy having those and knowing how far things are. I think I switched on hexes, which you can do in the settings. So you'll see here, it'll probably say 2 miles. Yes, about 2 miles. If you go to the settings, you can switch on the grid and you can have hexes, for example, and then you've got hexes. Some people may prefer that. And then you can change the size of the hexes as well, because I think, yeah, the cell width is 1, for example, but you can change that if you want to have smaller or larger hexes. Let's go to a random domain. Say if they arrive into the domain, and obviously they're not going to see the full map because they don't know where they are. Let's wait for Tepest to load. Where's an entrance to Tepest? Let's say they appear from the mists. Oh, it's a tricky one. I probably chose the worst one to do this. For here, over here. So if you hold down and ping, so over here where it's by Goblin Wood, that's where they appear. So say if you want them to appear here, but they can't see stuff. So you can turn on what's called Fog of War, or I think it's got a different name these days. It's not a dynamic lighting, what am I doing? Hide, reveal, mask. This does screw up if you've got dynamic lighting enabled. I'll show an example of dynamic lighting later as well when we do House of Lament. You've got dynamic lighting enabled, it kind of overrides it and disables it. But what this means is it's like the classic thing for anyone who's played those old like Command and Conquer style games, or Civilization I think as well, where you only sort of know what you've seen. So they say they arrive here, you reveal this part of the map to them, so you can still see the whole map still, albeit darker. They can literally only see this kind of brighter space here, and then they think we're going to travel west until we find something, or northeast, for example, and then you can reveal that, and they find Brigdarrow, for example, and Kaz Island, and so on, and then maybe when they get hold of the map, you reveal the whole thing at that point. But as they're travelling, they're told, oh, you need to head to Victrol, just follow the lake southeast, and then you can reveal bits as they kind of, their token goes like here and here and here, and then they finally find Victor. Now, it only includes the maps for the major domains. You might want to include a minor domain like Forlorn. That's what I'm currently running as I record this. You could just use a fan-made map or one of the maps from the old lore. Say, for instance, from Mrpedia, Fraternity of Shadows website. They've got some of the maps uploaded on there. You can add your own. You can change the size of it. And you can upload a map using this section, upload, and then for example, this is my maps folder, and you can grab something from there and add it manually. And you might want to do that for all the locations within a domain as well. This just saves the time of having to manually put in the maps, and you've got all the tokens as well. The manually put in the domain maps, I should say, for the major domains, and having those ready-made and having them accurate and everything, so you don't have to worry about making sure they're in right and the size of them is correct in terms of the measure tool, measuring how far it takes to get from point A to point B. There's Folkovnia's map as well. This is the first domain I ran out after Curse of Strahd. Actually, technically it was Markovia, but Folkovnia was the first one I ran properly, and they were there for a few months out of game. And yeah, so then if we go to something like the House of Lament, and I'm going to add in, just to show the dynamic lighting. So I did a video recently where I kind of made my own token for, it was a TPK's video, and I made myself a satyr druid and another one with green hair. And then just like for a laugh now, I include them in some videos. So I'm going to turn on, let's just say this dude has dark vision. So you go to the token settings, enable vision, night vision 60. So you can see here that this is what you can see so far. This is kind of like the outside area. And over here are some doors. Oh. Ah, that's interesting. They don't actually have the doors enabled on the default. I think this is a new game I booted up. Ah, so they did this, they changed it in Curse of Strahd. So this is what dynamic lighting with the doors used to look like. So they used to use orange lines for the doors. What you can do nowadays is place door, and then you line up the corners. Just do something like, you probably want to do 2 doors there, but I'm going to just do 1 big door. And then what happens is you can choose to make it a secret door, a locked door, or open, or some or all of the above. And then my character here would click on that and open the door, and then my character can then go inside here. So it's a bit of a shame they haven't updated that. So you'd have to probably do that manually if it was you. I was also going to suggest as well, I understand and I love how they do these sort of like old school drawn, hand-drawn looking maps. But if you wanted to use a map that was kind of more, an actual map that had some more flavour to it and had, like, say, rooms actually paint, like, proper, you could see all the stuff in them properly, and this statue, you actually see it as a statue, then there's people who've made their own versions of House of Lament. DM Andy, I think, does, and I think when I ran House of Lament in my game, I swapped out these maps for DM Andy's. The issue was I don't think they lined up. So I think I either had to move the dynamic lighting, so that would be this layer, so all the blue is walls, in this case all the orange is either windows or doors, or I think I just redrew them. So you can see here it's all for, and you've got like the basement down here where the amber vestige is. And so yeah, that's a bit of a hassle, but hey, you know, it saves you from having to do it all from scratch, and at least you've got all the tokens in here ready, you don't have to add in all the tokens manually. But if, say, for instance, you were going to run a House of Lament and add it to your game, buying the whole module might be overkill. So it's just, I guess, I want to show what's available and what you can and can't do in Van Richten's Guide to sort of, so you can make a better judgment call on whether it's worth paying the however many dollars, $20, $25 to get it, if, you know, it doesn't make sense for you to do that. There is a compendium as well, which I don't think I've shown yet. So this is basically all the information in the book. So you've got, here we go, House of Lament, the intro, story overview, the adventure flow chart picture, which it shows in the book, types of hauntings, and then each of the rooms, as you can see, room 1, porch, room 2, foyer, room 3, parlour, and so on and so on. This is all the information like it has in the book. And it also includes the magic items that should be findable in this place. Even if they're not limited, even if they're not in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. For instance, the Bag of Holding is quite universal. That's probably from like the Dungeon Master's Guide. And any information that's probably talked about in Van Richten's Guide is included here, even if it's more general information, such as how chases work, how firearms work, pistol, because I think Anna McRae has one. And speaking of Alan McRae, you've got all the named NPCs. So say if you decide to add Alan McRae to House of Lament, here he is. For a laugh, let's say Jakuna's escaped her domain and she appears as well. You can drag in the tokens as you want, that kind of thing. Say if you wanted, you lost the Dolk Dranzorg token, even though I can see him literally right there. You can just grab him again from this menu. And then the monsters as well. You can see here, all the monsters that appear, even ones that aren't specific to Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. But you've also got the ones specific to Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, such as things like Zombie Clot, Vampiric Mind Flayer, and so on. And then finally, let's have a quick look at the Séance board. So the Séance board is used in House of Lament, but obviously you can use it however you want. What I really liked is as you can see here, the planchette is its own token. And when I played with my players, I showed them this map in quote marks, and then would say, you know, it drags the H it drags to the E, and I'd move it bit by bit rather than like move it from one letter to the other, so it kind of looks like it's sliding across the board. And then it goes to P, and it's like they've spelled the word help. And then when you got yes, no questions, and I think these symbols mean different things as well. I think that means like, oh, you know, a fight could be on the horizon, something like that. I think it says all this in the book, so yes. And I think we'll leave it there. I'm going to finish off the rest of the video with just a bit more info. Thank you very much. And that's the demo run through done. I was going to do some FAQs, but they're very similar to the FAQs I did at the end of the Curse of Strahd Roll20 video I did. It's pretty much exactly the same, but every time I say Curse of Strahd, you just change it for Van Richten's guide. So rather than just re-record it and say the same thing again, what I'd like to do is usher you over to the other video. I'll include a link in the description, and depending on what device you're using, something might have appeared here, like a little link thing. You might as well just watch it on there, and then, you know, because all the answers are the same, we're just talking about a different thing. The questions, if you're curious, are: do you need to have Van Richten's guide book separately? Do you need to buy the Van Richten's guide on Roll20? Do you actually have to buy it? Do you have to have a Roll20 subscription, like the paid monthly or yearly subscription? And what other VTTs, virtual tabletops, are out there that aren't Roll20? So like I said, rather than repeat myself, if you go to the other video, have a look at the time bar. I do things where I say, you know, FAQs start at this point. You should be able to jump straight there and find it. It's also worth mentioning as well, you can get Curse of Strahd and Van Richten's guide together as a bundle and save something like $5 instead of buying them separate, so you might want to consider that. And that's it for this one. I'm not sure when I'm going to publish this, so I'll be careful saying what videos are coming up, but I'm going to be doing some more domains soon, if I haven't already. Part 2 of Forlorn. I've got an opportunity to run Tovag, which is Kaz's domain, Kaz Vecna's rival, and that will probably just be a few session thing, so that probably will follow shortly on after my Forlorn video is done. And then I have plans to run Haslan and the Shadowlands in the future, so there'll be videos coming up as well. And then I like to do videos covering NPCs, dedicated videos to some of the important NPCs like the Mist Wanderers detailed in Van Richten's guide. And then I do some videos where it's like, consider adding these villains to your campaign, consider adding these good or neutral aligned NPCs to your campaign. And I try and borrow a lot from old lore as well, and that kind of thing. And we'll leave it there. Thank you, Mist Wanderers.